You better hope and pray that your league mates don't find this video because they are drafting these 7 wide receivers embarrassingly wrong this year. Today, we're going to tell you exactly why and where these wide receivers compare in ADP versus our rankings. And fellas, for this video, we're going to be using half-PPR consensus ADP. And I want us to actually start out with a pair of teammates because despite being relatively far apart in ADP, we actually have them very close together in our rankings. That would be DJ Moore and Rome Odunze. And we're going to go in ADP order for this episode. So let's start with Rome Odunze. Currently going as the wide receiver 20 in half PPR drafts consensus around the industry. Yet he's the wide receiver 29 in our consensus rankings. And there's actually some disagreement among us here because Cameron, you have DJ Moore as a top 25 wide receiver. Ty and I have DJ Moore outside of our top 30 wide receivers. So I'll maybe have you start here. Give us like the pro DJ Moore side of the coin, and then Ty and I might actually flip and give us the Rome Odunze side of the coin.
Yeah, we're talking about a guy in DJ Moore who 3 of the last 4 seasons, 135 plus targets, 95 plus receptions. Last season was wonky. He's a guy who's typically got a deeper yards per reception. We've seen between kind of that 12.4 all the way up to 14.2 for most of his career. Had a season 2020 with Carolina where he was up at 18.1 yards per reception. And then last year down at 9.9. And so that's why despite having 98 receptions, he was still under 1,000 yards. And I understand Caleb Williams is still his quarterback, but they're not going to have Shane Waldron and whoever else filling in at the offensive coordinator position. They have Ben Johnson. And I would assume my projection is that DJ Moore is going to see more of those down the field targets once again, right? I don't think he's necessarily going to be, always the deep threat. He's always going to be the guy, but I don't think we're just going to get these short screens over and over to DJ Moore where it's just like gross to watch and you don't want to see the Chicago Bears play. I don't know necessarily if Caleb Williams is going to take this insane step forward, but I do think it's going to be a better looking offense than it was last year. I think they're going to move the ball down the field more, as Ben Johnson likes to do. I think Ben Johnson wants to prove, hey, there's a reason I waited this long to take this job. I'm going to show you why I'm good at football. And I think DJ Moore is a very good and very capable wide receiver. I have him remaining as the one, at least for this season. I think I do think it will be closer between him and Rome, but I think DJ Moore retains, that first wide receiver 1 spot on this team. And as a guy who's finished, no lower than wide receiver 22 over the last 6 seasons, I think he kind of stays in that range.
The other thing that by the way, I'm on the Rome Odunze side of this, but I think the other thing you could probably vouch for DJ Moore as well is he's been taking snaps out of the backfield for the Chicago Bears this offseason. Could we get a little bit of a Deebo Samuel roll out of him where you go back to his 2021 season where he put up, I'm not going to sit here and tell you DJ Moore is going to put up top 5 wide receiver numbers, but is there a world where he gets a few carries out of the backfield, they turn him into a yak monster, hit him on a few deep shots? Yeah, there's a world where DJ Moore pans out, connects on more of those deep balls this year with Caleb Williams. But I think the part that, Ty, I'll kick it over to you then, that I'm maybe a little bit more concerned about is that I think Ben Johnson has emphasized this offseason really wanting to, quote unquote, go back to the basics with Caleb Williams and really help him build a strong foundation in the NFL. And to me, Rome Odunze is just the better player at doing that for this offense when he's running the out routes, the intermediate slant routes, the go routes. That's what's primarily in his arsenal.
No, that's exactly it. I think when you look at just kind of basic wide receiver to quarterback connections, you brought up all of the routes, and those routes are the Rome Odunze routes. Those are the X receiver routes, the quick passes out. And I would go as far to say, I'm not sure that there's exactly going to be like an alpha target getter in this offense because there's playmakers everywhere in this offense, from Rome to DJ Moore to Colson Loveland to even DeAndre Swift out of the backfield. There are playmakers everywhere. So it's certainly possible that we're just going to spread the ball around. In my projections, I've got them on fairly similar volume. Only difference is that I've got Rome being the guy also getting more downfield instead of DJ Moore. So it really is kind of a preference thing. Maybe it is because we've seen DJ Moore do it before. Maybe I'm betting more so on the year 2 leap for Rome Odunze in an offense, again, where it's going to go back to the basics. We're just going to simplify things between Rome and Caleb that it may be more easy targets compared to what it was last year, where he's running across the middle and he's not exactly sitting in the zone gaps.
And maybe, and you all can do whatever you want with this information that we're feeding you, but I think essentially the point that we can all agree on here is that these players should not be 10 wide receivers apart and 30 picks apart in ADP, 24 picks apart in ADP. Like, Cameron, even your discrepancy in the rankings, like your wide receiver 32 ranking for Rome is only 5 spots off from where we have him in our consensus. And Ty, in our consensus in general, sure, Rome's a wide receiver 27, but DJ Moore's a wide receiver 29. So instead of DJ Moore being the wide receiver 20 and Rome being the wide receiver 37, essentially what we're trying to communicate here is like, hey, DJ Moore is probably being overdrafted at wide receiver 20, and Rome Odunze is being underdrafted at wide receiver 37. So probably that gap should close, whether you want to call it wide receiver 25 for DJ Moore and wide receiver 30 for Rome Odunze. You know, cut your pizza, cut your cake, however you want it. But at the end of the day, I think, Cameron, and maybe I'll let you conclude since we had you turn to DJ Moore. Would you also say these two should probably be closer together in terms of wide receiver ADP?
Yeah, I would agree. I think what Ty said is kind of where I'm at. I've seen DJ Moore do this over and over again, so that's why I err on the side of him emerging, because it is hard to be like it's just going to be these two when you do have Luther Bird and Colson Lovell both taking high end drafts. I think this team's going to throw enough that, obviously by my rankings, I think they're both going to be good fantasy players this season. But that is the worry, and that's my worry a little more with Rome than it is with DJ Moore. However, like you said, if we're talking value, I have Rome as the better value, and I think should creep up, and I'd be very happy camper if DJ Moore became the wide receiver 25, 26. I would have a lot more DJ Moore. In best ball, I'd probably have him in my home league then. Just because believe in this offense, but at the same time, we have to be realistic of there is not an Amon-Ra St. Brown here, right? DJ Moore's very good, but he's not that. And there's a lot of mouths to feed, so the ball is going to get spread around.
Yeah, and there's bound to be some growing pains here with how many mouths there are to feed, with Ben Johnson being a first-time head coach, with this team really like getting some good, proper coaching that they kind of didn't get from Shane Waldron and co last year. So, it'll be interesting to see how this Bears receiving group shakes out this year. We know you're prepping for your home leagues as well. This is the place you're going to want to be this offseason to help do so. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, turn on the notification bell as well, so you know when all of our newest content is up. Yes, we want to help you prep for your home leagues, but we're doing live drafts every week to mock draft with you all, practice with you all, and remind you of just the fun and camaraderie that comes with fantasy football. As much as I want to beat Ty and Cam in our home leagues this year, as much as you want to beat your friends in your home leagues this year, fantasy football is about fun and enjoyment of the sport that we all love. So we hope you join us for our ride with a few insights that we'll sprinkle in along the way as well. Fellas, this is a player who we have said pretty much all offseason, hey, we've told you numerous times, we're out on Zay Flowers, but it's been a hot minute since we've actually gone in depth on Zay Flowers. And I will say, I did not realize in our consensus, we had him as the wide receiver 40 compared to his wide receiver 25 ADP. But Cameron, as like the number one Zay Flowers anti-truther, I'm not going to call you a hater, an anti-truther on this show. I'll maybe have you like set the scene as to why like we've, kind of dug Zay Flowers his grief on this show.
Yeah, I mean, he was 18th in target share last year, 22nd in target rate, 17th in targets per out run, 9th in target separation. So it all sounds, 26th in yards per target, all sounds great, but then he's wide receiver 36 in points per game. And so like there is that discrepancy there, because even though Lamar, like we've said multiple times, MVP, 4,100 yards, 40 passing touchdowns, the team just doesn't throw the ball as much as other teams. And if we're looking at history, do we think Lamar again goes 4,000 yards and 40 touchdowns? No, not necessarily. So even if, Zay Flowers gets an even bigger portion of the pie, some of these especially the touchdown stat, is probably going to come back to earth a little bit when you're still relying on Derrick Henry. You still have Lamar's legs, so you can still run the offense through that. So it's all to say Zay Flowers is very talented, extremely talented, fun to watch NFL player. Just when you're on the Baltimore Ravens, it doesn't necessarily translate to fantasy success. And if you take him, up at the wide receiver 25, that feels more like a ceiling after what we saw last season.
Touchdowns need to fall Zay Flowers' way. That is seriously the name in the game, because you're not concerned about him being the wide receiver one in this offense. You're not concerned about Rashad Bateman or DeAndre Hopkins being a better NFL wide receiver than Zay Flowers at this point in his career. What you're concerned about is that Zay Flowers had an 11.5% red zone target share last year, which was behind both Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely. Like, the red zone offense has flown through those two. Now, in his rookie season, Zay Flowers, I believe, had like a 24% red zone target share. So could that fall his way? Sure, but that was only 4 touchdowns in his rookie season. Only got 5 touchdowns last year in a career year for Lamar Jackson in many ways. I'm not convinced we get there to wide receiver 25 unless we see Zay Flowers catch 7-8 touchdowns this year. Ty, I don't know where you're at, but for me, that's how we need to see the cookie crumble if we're actually going to get wide receiver 25 value on Zay Flowers.
Touchdowns. That's really what it comes down to. We got almost a 300-yard increase in air yards last year. So we got a little more downfield than just complete design touches, even though Zay Flowers was still top 10 in design touches. We need touchdowns to go up. And I'm not sure that's going to happen when your offense possesses playmakers and bigger players like Lamar Jackson, like Derrick Henry, like Mark Andrews, like Isaiah Likely for certain weeks of the year. I think it also speaks volumes that this team made Rashad Bateman kind of a point of emphasis in the red zone last year. Yep. And then I know DeAndre Hopkins just kind of took a step back last year and, went from Tennessee to Kansas City, but like, there's just another mouth to feed for a guy who's been one of the best contested catches or red zone area targets that we've seen in a long, long time. So I think the road is very, very tough ahead for Zay Flowers to really get to this wide receiver 25 price tag, even though he's been a wide receiver 31, 32 in points per game. It's just, you should know what you're getting. And I'm not sure what the upside case is for a year 3 Zay Flowers in this offense.
I mean, just looking at, if you're over on YouTube, you can see the consensus ADP that Draft Sharks puts together from across the industry. One of the best tools on the internet. We use it every offseason. Xavier Worthy, I'd rather take the gamble on Xavier Worthy in a Kansas City Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes passing offense. I'd rather take the plunge on Jameson Williams, Tedero McMillan. Like, 3 guys right there I would much rather take the plunge on than Zay Flowers. So, yeah, I don't. It feels like when you draft Zay Flowers at wide receiver 25, it's because you're looking at the advanced metrics that you brought up at the beginning, Cameron, and you said, well, there's a little bit of regression. So what if Zay Flowers is just like the wide receiver 20 in those categories, and voila, he shakes out as a wide receiver 25. I don't get it. I don't get where people are like generating this excitement from for a 5'9" wide receiver who sure can get crafty in space. Sure, you can hit on the deep ball, but inside of the red zone and scoring touchdowns, that's just not a 5'9" guy's forte. Like, they're not hitting him on crafty slant routes or crafty touches out of the backfield to score in the red zone. If Todd Monken got a little bit more creative, ran some out of the backfield stuff for Zay Flowers in the red zone, sure, but I don't know. We saw that too soon, maybe not the right reference, but we saw how that kind of worked for Tank Dell in the red zone, put him in a blocking position. You're not going to do that with your small guys. So I don't know where the touchdowns are going to come from.
Yeah, Derrick Henry, 60 red zone touches last year. That's
you have the big dog. You're not feeding Zay Flowers.
Exactly.
Big dog.
And then your second option is probably Lamar Jackson's legs, and then you go to one of your tight ends, and then it's probably Rashad Bateman and then Zay Flowers. But even last year, if Zay Flowers has 10 touchdowns, he'd be the only wide receiver with double-digit touchdowns to not finish inside the top 20. So, even if he's get 6 more, if he's at 8, he's not even a top 25 wide receiver. So it's touchdowns got to fall his way, and he's got to see an increase in volume after Lamar Jackson just had a career year. So it's just, there's so much working against him that it just doesn't feel like worth taking at wide receiver 25.
Oh, we all agree there. We'll put a bow on it there. It had just been a minute since we actually went in depth on Zay Flowers. It seems like he's always the guy where it's like, well, we've slandered him enough in the offseason, so we won't waste your time. But considering we're getting into the prime point of the offseason where you're starting to consider who's worth drafting and who isn't in your drafts, look, we're just going to unleash all of our takes that we provide you throughout the offseason and really hammer home some of the main points that we've been talking about. Calvin Ridley is another player that we haven't talked about at nauseum this offseason, but we've brought him up as like a bounce back candidate. But I don't think we've talked about him enough as like an actual value in your fantasy football drafts. He's our consensus wide receiver 24 with the ADP consensus out wide receiver 31. I don't like doing the bit where it's this year's Jahmyr Gibbs, this year's Jamar Chase is obvious, right? Like I don't like doing that bit. But if I got to pick a Terry McLaurin for this year, like, to me, Ty, I'll start with you here. It's got to be Calvin Ridley.
I mean, just from a quarterback perspective, absolutely. I mean, is there anybody that's getting a bigger jump in quarterback play from Will Levis and Mason Rudolph to Cam Ward?
Yeah.
I mean, Calvin Ridley, he doesn't even really need to be, league winner. We just are trying to show the optimism for Calvin Ridley getting the upgrade in quarterback play. And I would make the general statement that it seems like after the first 20 wide receivers, there's this giant tier of about like 16 wide receivers that you can see finishing whichever way. And you'd be like, sure. Yeah, totally. And I think what we're saying is you take the optimism, the outlook for Cam Ward, and you look around this Tennessee offense and you go, who else? Like, who else is going to be the guy for Cam Ward? It is going to be Calvin Ridley. So when you take a look at the consensus at wide receiver 31, you're getting some kind of value here for a guy that can finish as a low end wide receiver 2, maybe even a high end flex.
Yeah. And Terry McLaurin, I want to recognize last year did finish as a top 10 wide receiver. That is not what we're projecting with Calvin Ridley whatsoever. Again, he's our consensus wide receiver 24, but Cameron, I think, when you look at how the landscape has shifted for Calvin Ridley in Tennessee, how he's going to be the lead dog, despite the hype that Aiyuk Aiyuk is getting out of Titans camp right now. This is a guy who, at the end of the season, you could finished as a wide receiver 24 and gave you like the wide receiver 28 in fantasy points per game this year, yet being drafted as a wide receiver 31.
Yeah, I mean, number 1 in air yards last year, 5th in ADOT, 3rd in deep. I mean, they were still using him down the field. Like, he's still an elite athlete, and we can talk about all the hype we want about all of the, Aiyuk and Xavier Restrepo, and even if you want to
the Lockett,
yeah. But
Nick
in
West,
the preseason,
Nick West is a Dolphin now. Anyways,
yeah. But like we can talk about all that. But then when Cam Ward stepped on the field against Tampa Bay, I understand it's preseason, but it's the most live action we got. He went 5 of 8 for 65 yards or 67 yards. Calvin Ridley had 3 catches for 50 yards.
Yeah,
I don't care what else you're saying. I mean, he went. Everything you're hearing from camp is this connection is getting really strong. And then his first live action, he completes over 80% of his yards to Calvin Ridley. He completes, 3 of his 5 passes to Calvin Ridley. So I believe it. I'm buying into it. Cam Ward looked good. Obviously, there's going to be some rookie, situations where you're like scratching your head if you're a Titans fan. But from a fantasy perspective, it's going to be a much better season for Calvin Ridley, who, if he could have connected on 68% of his passes instead of 58% of his passes last year, we'd be having a much different conversation about him this season.
And just you wait until the tweet comes out that Calvin Ridley and Cam Ward are brunch buddies now. They're going out to brunch after every practice. And oh boy, that connection is really strengthening. Yeah, they're golf buddies. Right. Just wait. You just wait. And that's going to hit absolutely insane when that comes out. Look, we'll take a quick break here. You can draft all these players right now over on Underdog. They got literally millions of dollars of prizes that they're giving out this summer. So if you want to take a crack at that, draft some of these players or just avoid drafting some of these players, we'll hear from them on how you can do so. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Underdog, home of Best Ball Mania 6. There are $15 million in prizes up for grabs, with $2 million going to first place and another $1 million going to second place. Entering is super easy. You join a draft with 11 other people, select your team, and Underdog will automatically generate your highest scoring lineup each week. Essentially, you get all the fun of drafting with zero stress of making the wrong decision on who to start. Underdog hosts a variety of other contests as well, ranging from $3 entries to $500 entries, so there's something for everybody's pocketbook. If you're not on Underdog yet, yet, use the code FELLAS when you sign up because they'll give you up to $1,000 in bonus credits to play with, and we'll give you our 2025 draft guide for free. Again, that's code FELLAS over on Underdog. Now let's get you back to the rest of the show. Alrighty, fellas, let's keep it cruising here. We've talked about 2 Chicago Bears wide receivers, DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, Zay Flowers, and Calvin Ridley thus far. Another wide receiver that people, I don't want to say they're hung up on, but we value differently compared to consensus is Matthew Golden, wide receiver for the Green Bay Packers. Our consensus wide receiver 38, ADP consensus wide receiver 46. Ty, I'll come right back to you on this one because I think you and I have been maybe the 2 biggest believers of Matthew Golden on this show. Not that Cameron has been out on Matthew Golden by any means, but when you and I have talked about Matthew Golden, we've loved how he actually fits into this Green Bay Packers offense.
And we've been getting reports that literally the one constant receiver in all the different lineups that Green Bay likes to trot out during training camp, because Lord knows it's ever revolving when it comes to one practice is these 2 and the next practice it's the other 2. Matthew Golden has been the consistent guy. And we've been, we were saying at least a month ago, like, when we get the reports that it's Matthew Golden and Romeo Doubs, or it's Matthew Golden, Dontavion Wicks, when we hear that Matthew Golden is lining up in 2 wide receiver sets, it's kind of wheels up and here we go for Matthew Golden, because this Green Bay first round wide receiver, when has that happened? And when have they, like, everything points to Matthew Golden really being the guy in this passing game. He may not get the targets right away, but the beauty of the cost right now in consensus is that you can wait for the second half of the year bump. But I think I have some optimism just for his skill set coming out of school that he can hit the ground running a little bit quicker. And especially in an offense with Matt LaFleur and Jordan Love, Matthew Golden can step up and emerge as really a go-to guy in this offense right from the start.
It just fits so seamlessly into this LaFleur offense, right? Where it's play action, hit Matthew Golden on a go route down the sideline, hit him on a big dig route across the middle. I mean, he fits perfectly into this scheme. He offers something different than the Romeo Doubs of the world. He offers something different than Jaden Reed, who's in a walking boot right now. And people were like, I laugh how like 2 days in the camp, oh, Jaden Reed's out there in 2 wide receiver sets. And then literally 2 days later, it's just like Jaden Reed's nowhere to be found except in 3 wide receiver sets. It's just like, when will we learn? And that isn't even to say you have to like Matthew Golden better than Jaden Reed. I actually still have Jaden Reed ahead of Matthew Golden in my rankings, but I think that's going to flip pretty soon because I'm just continuously rising on Matthew Golden as the wide receiver 1 in this Green Bay Packers offense. And you're right, Ty. It doesn't necessarily have to come after week 9, right? Where again, I'll point out the tweet Ron Stewart threw out there. Since 2010, 21 rookie wide receivers have posted 16 plus points per game from week 9 on. I'm not saying Matthew Golden is automatically going to hit that, but hey, you know what? For a rookie wide receiver, Cameron, that's not an impossible mark for Matthew Golden to hit in this Green Bay Packers offense with a gunslinger like Jordan Love at quarterback.
Yeah, it's an ambiguous wide receiver room. And we kind of know what Jaden Reed at this point is. At this point, we know how the Packers view him. He's a slot guy for us. That's where we're going to keep him. They drafted Matthew Golden, so that doesn't make me feel like, oh, hey, they're looking to put Jaden Reed on the outside. And it's nice because you can take the chance on Golden here to be, turn out to be the clear wide receiver 1. And if he's not, he's most likely still going to return on ADP. Mm-hmm. He's priced in as being, a 1B, 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D kind of a wide receiver room. So even if that's what it is, if it's like, oh, it's a Dontavion Wicks week, it's a Romeo Doubs week, I just had to throw Dontavion Wicks in there, but Jaden Reed week, it's a Tucker Kraft week. That's okay when you're taking a wide receiver 46. But if, like you guys are saying, over the back half of the season or even earlier, it's all of a sudden, oh, hey, it's Matthew Golden week and a Matthew Golden week and a Matthew Golden week. You have one of the steals of the draft here. So I really like it. I'm a little, more cautious on it just because I just don't trust Matt LaFleur to, give us exactly what we want out of Matthew Golden. Sure. However, it's really hard to say like he doesn't have any upside because he sure does. There is a lot of upside here from wide receiver 46.
Yeah, 100% does. And I want to loop back on the Jaden Reed thing because this is somewhat of a newer development But this was over the weekend from Rob Domovsky, the ESPN national reporter for Green Bay. Matt LaFleur said wide receiver Jaden Reed being in a walking boot is not related to the toe injury he had before camp. This is something different. When asked if he's concerned about week 1 for Reed, he said he hoped not, but, quote, anytime you see a guy in a boot, that's a concern. So I will tell you right now. I will tell you right now, after this recording, the first thing I'm doing is going and flipping Matthew Golden and Jaden Reed in my projections, because to me that's not great news for Jaden Reed until further notice.
Yeah,
we'll keep it moving here because I wanted to try and avoid players that were different in our consensus compared to ADP because of injury. But I really feel like we need to include Brandon Aiyuk here, because sure, he comes out as the consensus wide receiver 69 in our projections. Could that translate to a higher points per game average? Absolutely. But look, we just got reports from Kyle Shanahan today, and you can figure out how truthful you want to interpret the statement to be. But apparently they're hoping Brandon Aiyuk will be ready by week 6 of the season. I don't know, fellas. I'm not down to draft Brandon Aiyuk as the wide receiver 49 if I'm not going to get him until week 6, and potentially even beyond, and that's assuming his recovery goes along the Kyle Shanahan timeline. And after last season, I don't know how much I want to trust the Kyle Shanahan timeline. What he said, Christian McCaffrey was good, and Christian McCaffrey was really never good. I don't know. I didn't want to take not a cheap shot, but like the low-hanging fruit here with Brandon Aiyuk, with how different he is in our consensus. But Cameron, I'll start with you on this one. I'm just not interested in chasing injuries, because they'll find my team eventually.
Yeah, it's Ty and I talked about him on our worst picks video, and it really just came down to the fact that you have the ramp up period then after, right? He's not going to be fully healthy when he comes back. So
right.
Do we want to, do you want to take that chance of maybe he can return? And it feels like even if he's the best, it's just so many mouths to feed. He's still going to be the third weapon on that offense, right? He's not overtaking George Kittle and CMC again. Exactly. If Ricky Pearsall comes out and looks good the first 8 weeks, he's probably wide receiver 1 rest of the season. Jawan Jennings you could be drafting him and not really get full Brandon Aiyuk till week 10, and he's kind of playing as the 5th best option on this team for the rest of the season just because he was injured to start. So that's the worry. There's just so much downside, and it just doesn't feel like there's really any upside to it. It feels like maybe he can be the wide receiver 30 in points per game this season. Maybe he comes back and he's awesome, but it just doesn't feel like that happens a lot coming off an ACL when you don't come back till week 6. And, maybe like you said with Kyle Shanahan, maybe week 6 turns into week 10, and then he doesn't ramp up till the fantasy playoffs, and you only get like 3 full games of it. So it's
at that point, it's not even worth drafting him.
100%.
He's a waiver wire ad at that point.
Yes, 100%.
Waiver wire ad for 3 weeks.
Yeah, so I don't know. It's just a lot of downside. It'd be scary for me to be drafting him like that.
Just looking at the guys in this range, it's Tyler Warren, Josh Downs, Emeka Egbuka, Colson Loveland, Jake. Like all those guys are going ahead of Brandon Aiyuk, but all within like 6-7 picks. And even the guys afterwards, like, give me the shot on Drake May. Give me the shot on Jordan Love here. Like, if you sat on quarterback, like, yeah, I'm drafting quarterback ahead of Brandon Aiyuk, that's for sure. Or if you're looking for a second quarterback, honestly, I just don't. I don't know, man. I'm just not a Brandon Aiyuk guy this year, Ty. I guess maybe to wrap up what Cam said, yeah, I just don't see any upside in drafting him.
No, because you run the risk of him, hitting form when it's too late. Like, it's a simple thought experiment here. If he comes back week 6, right? Again, hypothetical, because I don't really want to take a Kyle Shanahan timeline, as gospel here. But if he does return week 6, we know that there's a ramp up period. Let's be optimistic and say that the ramp up is 4 weeks. That's week 10. So the big question here is, does he go late enough in drafts, or does he go in a range of the draft where there are not other guys that give you more immediate upside right out of the gates compared to Aiyuk? And I would argue that that's not the case. He's not going in a range or in a point in a draft where you're like, well, you know what? Brandon Aiyuk has, the best upside out of anybody here. you were pointing out, Emeka Ibuka, Colson Loveland, like those guys will start week 1 and they've got upside, like right from the start. So it's not that we don't think that Brandon Aiyuk, when he comes back to form, won't be one of the top receivers, if not the best receiver here on this 49ers offense. But again, we have to wait it out. And I don't want to play the waiting game because, again, I'm like you guys were saying, I don't exactly even know then what the upside is when he does return to form.
Yeah, most definitely. Let's play a little bit of a game that I think will actually kind of help transition us. Because how far would you actually push Brandon Aiyuk down the board? I'll just throw out a series of names. It's going to get ugly, so we'll keep it snappy. We'll keep it short reactions here. But like, let's just start. We'll go with players only going after Brandon Aiyuk. Let's start with the name I already brought up: Brandon Aiyuk or Drake May. Drake May for me as well. Brandon Aiyuk or Michael Pittman Jr.
Michael Pittman.
I'm getting likely a full 17 out of Pittman. Brandon Aiyuk or JJ McCarthy?
I'd say JJ.
Yeah. My issue's in a redraft. She's probably your backup quarterback, so I think I'd still go Brandon Aiyuk. But if we're talking like best ball, then I think I go Aiyuk. Or I think I go JJ.
I think it depends on your context, but again, point being, there's even questions around that. Brandon Aiyuk or Keon Coleman?
I have Keon Coleman higher, so I'm going to say Keon Coleman.
I have Keon Coleman higher as well.
Can I say neither?
I mean, you could say neither. That's. Would you rather pass on him for Kyle Pitts, who goes 2 picks after Keon Coleman?
Maybe
Dolphin buddies, baby.
I'd rather take my backup tight end than Brandon Aiyuk at that point, and it's not Kyle Pitts. So we're reaching for like Brenton Strange or for Hunter Henry.
Yeah, who else is Hunter? Yeah, Hunter Henry would be the next tight end you could consider there. Brandon Aiyuk or Darnell Mooney?
Darnell Mooney.
With the shoulder injury?
Even with the shoulder injury.
He'll be back much sooner than Aiyuk.
I think I still lean Mooney just because you don't know how long you're losing Aiyuk.
I agree. Jaden Higgins.
Oh, Jaden Higgins.
Going Higgins, yep.
Yeah, Jaden Higgins is definitely an undervalued one here. Luther Burden or Brandon Aiyuk?
Probably going to go Luther Burden as well.
Honestly, at that point in the draft, why not just shoot for upside with Luther Burden? Because if things fall his way, he could, again, in a hypothetical perfect world, he may be the best wide receiver here in Chicago. I wouldn't bet it, but you have to admit that it is a possibility.
Ben Johnson took him with valuable draft capital. It has to be worth something at some point. Two more names here: Ray Davis or Brandon Aiyuk.
The longer that James Cook holds out, I'm going to keep. I would say Ray Davis.
Slapping Ray Davis. Absolutely.
I would say Ray Davis as well.
Then last name, which will transition us here, because I do think this is actually a fascinating one: Brandon Aiyuk or Tre Harris.
Brandon Aiyuk.
This is probably Brandon Aiyuk for me.
I think this is Brandon Aiyuk for me as well. It is bad vibes for Tre Harris right now out of Chargers camp. Look, somehow Jeff Bell made a great tweet today over at Football Guys. Somehow the drops of Tre Harris in training camp and preseason have made us forget about the drops of Quentin Johnson in the past. And what's better than did a show with friend of the show, Jagger May. He goes, what's better than having one Quentin Johnson on your team than two Quentin Johnsons on your team?
Yeah.
And not even that. You have the emergence of Keandre Lambert-Smith, who, look, the camp clips are cool, but even the buzz out of camp seems like they might be a little bit more interested in Keandre Lambert-Smith. You got Keenan Allen coming back to the Chargers, signing a contract with the team. Look, man, at one point, Tre Harris looked like a very, very attractive pick because he could potentially be the wide receiver 2, play a great complementary role alongside Ladd McConkey. But like day by day, we have him as our consensus wide receiver 64. ADP has him at wide receiver 55. That is rapidly dropping on other platforms like Underdog. He's already nearly at wide receiver 60. Like, I'm not going to be surprised when Tre Harris actually dips closer to wide receiver 70 than he does wide receiver 50 by the time draft's close.
Yeah, he's definitely at the point where I'm not drafting him. It's just you're fighting to be wide receiver 3 on a team that I'm not saying they're going to, obviously Rashawn Slater missing time. It's going to change everything, change the offense a little bit more when you lose a player of that caliber. But at their core, Greg Roman and Jim Harbaugh want to run the ball. Like they want to. That is their desire, right? I'm not saying it's going to happen as much as they want, but that's the identity they want to get to eventually.
Mm-hmm.
And as much as you might not like it, Keenan Allen is going to be the wide receiver 2 on this team. And I personally don't. I don't think it's particularly close. I mean, he had over 100 targets last season. He had he was on pace for, I think, 160 targets 2 seasons ago with Justin Herbert. Right? He's not like far removed from a fantastic season with Herbert. So I understand he's going to be slower, but he has that connection. He's not a guy who's ever relied on speed. He's always been crafty. He showed he could do it last year in a bad Shane Waldron offense. So, yeah, I think he's fighting to be a wide receiver 3. I still think Quentin Johnston's probably going to be the wide receiver 3 in this offense. So it's just like, at least for the first half of the season. So I just don't know how great the upside actually is with Tre Harris here.
So that's interesting. You think Keenan is clear. I don't want to turn this into a Keenan Allen discussion, but I guess I don't see it as necessarily it's Ladd McConkey and then there's a wide receiver 2. I think I see it more as it's Ladd McConkey and pick your week who's going to be the wide receiver 2 in this offense. And I don't know if I necessarily trust any of them, but I certainly don't trust Tre Harris, a wide receiver 55, when Quentin Johnston is going like wide receiver 63. Keenan Allen's going wide receiver 68. To me, this is just 3 guys who should probably be going between wide receiver 60 to 70, because I don't know whose week it's going to be, but they'll probably give me 1 or 2 productive weeks and score a touchdown, 6 to 8 weeks out of the season. One of these guys will score a touchdown, but it's literally like basically Chargers touchdown roulette each week as to who's going to be the one to hit pay dirt. How far is he going to tumble down in your rankings, Ty? Because you were nodding in agreement there.
Oof. He has already taken a tumble, because I kind of side with Cam on this one, that the Keenan Allen signing is more of an indictment on what they think that they have with Tre Harris right now, with Quentin Johnston and then Keandre Lambert-Smith, where I do think it is Ladd who's going to be the wide receiver 1, Keenan Allen who's going to be the 2, but not like, he's probably going to be closer to what I think will be the revolving door of KLS, Tre Harris, and Quentin Johnston. And honestly, for Tre Harris, as much as I love the fit with Tre Harris on this team, and you look at what he did really well at Ole Miss, Tre Harris is still pretty raw. Like I think we overlooked that a little bit, and we got a little slappy here with Tre Harris. And I
yards
will
per route run, bro. Yards per route run, bro. Look at the yards per route run.
Yeah, man. Just look at the advanced metrics. The only advanced metric, actually.
Yeah, right.
So I have no problem admitting that, like, again, we were a little slappy when it came to Tre Harris, and we just lost sight that, like, yeah, maybe he needs to develop a little bit. And maybe it's not just the route running. It may just also be the hands. And we saw how long it took Quentin Johnston. I'm not saying that Tre Harris is the same player as Quentin Johnston, but we saw how long it can take for a guy that isn't really a natural fit or isn't a, complete clean fit with the scheme right now. And he has drop issues. It's just going to take a little while. So I don't mind kind of keeping Tre Harris on waivers and put him on my watch list, right? As a, like, you know what, as soon as we get more consistent playing time from Tre Harris, then maybe there's some more interest. But right now, it feels like we're in a 3-person rotation with QJ, KLS, and Tre Harris.
Yeah, and like I said at the top, this is going to be dropping. Not only is his consensus going to be dropping, but his consensus in our rankings is definitely going to be dropping. So, like, I brought it up. From wide receiver 55 to probably wide receiver 65 is probably where I would expect it to maybe not bottom out, but where to end up kind of landing in that range with QJ and Keenan Allen. But in our consensus rankings, look, I'm going to be perfectly honest. I'd probably get, like, if Tre Harris were to fall outside of my top 70 wide receivers, I wouldn't be surprised in the least. Ty's like, I'm already there, dog. Guilty as charged.
Can I give us a little bit more Keenan Allen propaganda?
Please.
From after his bye, after his bye from week 8 on, he was 8th in targets last year. 8th in targets last year. Just to put that in perspective, his 17-game pace after week 8 on was 163 targets. Season before, he had 150 targets with Justin Herbert in 13 games. His 17-game pace was 196 targets. I think they're going to throw Keenan Allen the ball. I understand he's 33.
New regime.
But he gets open and he gets targets. I mean, being on a 17-game base for 163 and 196 the last 2 years, I just don't see all of a sudden that he's under 100 targets. That's honestly where I'm at with Keenan Allen.
He has something to offer this Chargers team. I'll maybe say it like that because with how old he is, he's not explosive anymore. He's still crafty. He's got the old vet craftiness going for him. He'll draw targets on this team. I don't doubt that. I think you have to decide for yourself, though. Are you going to take maybe the safety and more likely to be polished production of Keenan Allen, or would you rather take an upside swing on a QJ or Tre Harris, who's going to find the end zone a handful of times this year, should they not drop the ball in critical moments? So, I'm split on Keenan Allen. Like I said, I think you two see it a little more clearly as Keenan Allen as the 2 than I do, where I think it's really just like Keenan Allen, Tre Harris, Quentin Johnston, throwing KLS if you want, that are competing for like 3 wide receiver spots. But we'll see how this team pans out. All I know is that Tre Harris should be rapidly falling in rankings, and there's still going to be a discrepancy compared to where we have him in our rankings and where he'll end up going in drafts. If you want to see how far he ends up falling in our rankings, though, the best place to get that is our 2025 draft guide, where you'll get full satted out projections on over 290 players in the NFL this year. You'll get full team profiles highlighting specific stats that we've looked up that have gone into our research this year. Full team pages from last year. Who's the offensive coordinator? What style of system are they running? How that impacts our fantasy analysis. So much in that draft guide for you. That is down in the description, the pinned comment below. Or you can go to fellasdraftguide.com to get your hands on it. There will be weekly updates here throughout the month of August, so we can get you fully updated, fully prepared for your drafts this upcoming season. You can follow us on our other socials as well. FFFellas on Twitter, the FFFellas on Instagram, Fantasy Football Fellas on Facebook and TikTok. Hey, if you're just a fan of YouTube, you don't want to leave, you don't want to go anywhere else, Fantasy Football Fellas shorts here on the YouTube. We're what, 67.5 or 67,500? Now are we at
67.9? I think we just hit.
Oh, hello. So we're almost at 68K. Long way to 100K, but that'd be pretty cool if you all wanted to help us get our nice. Do you get a plaque for 100K subscribers, or is it only a mil?
100K, yeah. We do get a plaque for 100K.
All right, help us get that plaque. All right, I'm going to be greedy and value earthly treasures.
That goes right there, by the way. I don't know if I've told that you guys, but it's going right there.
No, it's the only small thing that fits in Cameron's background.
I'm just going to hold it the entire time.
Nothing can fit in his background because his back's up against the wall. So it's gonna be the only thing that's hanging over his left shoulder.
I feel like diagonal to fit in right here.
If you want to help us boost our subscriber count over there, you can definitely do that. It's all exclusive content that never gets uploaded here. It's not just like replays or highlights of the podcast. It's all unique content that we put over there for you as well. If you want to follow our personal socials, I'm at Lucas Wenzel on X, Cam Law, FFF for Cameron, Tyler_Plath for Ty. We'll be back later this week. Tomorrow, gosh, we're up to 3 episodes a week now. Another reason why you should be subscribed and have that notification bell turned on. We're up to 3 episodes a week now. We're talking about running backs and wide receivers that you should absolutely 100% positively be drafting before they break out this year. More league winning tips coming for you all. Stay safe, stay healthy. We'll see you tomorrow. Deuces.